Greetings again, Acolytes of the Force, and welcome back to the archives. Luke Skywalker started from nothing, a farm boy on a backwater planet in the middle of nowhere. His name, though, would soon gain notoriety when he joined the Rebel Alliance and destroyed the Death Star. After that, he would cement himself in galactic history as a legend, as he outed himself as a Jedi before literally destroying the Empire. To the public's knowledge, Luke had killed Vader and the Emperor directly, the two most powerful beings in the galaxy at the same time. And from that point forward, Luke would go on to start his own Jedi Order and face down many threats to the galaxy. Threats like Thrawn, the returned Emperor, the Vong, or even one of his own students in Darth Kaitis. But from all of this, the farm boy would never leave Luke, and Luke never forgot his humble origins. Because of this, Luke Skywalker was always humble himself, never one to overestimate his abilities or think of himself as better than anyone else. Yet, at some point towards the very beginning of the Abeloth crisis, Luke would do something that was so unbelievably arrogant, something that his own son was left without words after witnessing. So, today my friends, let's delve into that story and the most arrogant thing that Grandmaster Luke ever did, and how he ordered his son to beat up an innocent individual. But before we begin, we'd like to thank today's sponsor, NordVPN. If you're a survivor of Order 66 on the run from the Empire, and you want to hide your computer location, NordVPN is one of the most effective ways to secure your holocron from anywhere in the galaxy. From anywhere in the Outer Rim, you can access your favorite movies or TV shows, find better deals on interstellar flights or hotels, and just update your cybersecurity needs. Their line of malware protection, ransomware protection, and virus scanning are some of the best in the entire industry, and can protect you and your family from incoming threats from around the galaxy. If you're looking for a way to find your favorite movies and TV shows from other countries on the HoloNet, or simply want another line of defense to scan documents as you download them, Nord can grant you access from all across the galaxy. For a limited time, Nord is adding 4 months of extra onto their 2-year deal, and by using our link below, you can claim the deal for yourself, so be sure to check out NordVPN today. Thank you again to NordVPN for sponsoring today's holocron, and let's begin. The setup to the story is just as important as the story itself. We begin with the exile of Luke Skywalker from the New Republic. Following Jacen Solo's fall to the dark side, he had begun the Second Galactic Civil War, a war which left much of the New Republic in total ruin. This had come right after the heels of the Yuzhong Vong War, so it was twice as devastating as a result. Because of this, in the Republic, a brand new chief of state was elected, an Imperial by the name of Natasi Dala. You see, after the Imperial Remnant helped the New Republic in the Vong War, the New Republic as an entity was more or less abolished when the two factions decided to make peace and become known as the Galactic Alliance. But Chief Dala wasn't about to let the crimes of Darth Kaitis be so easily swept under the rug just because Jacen was dead. Instead, Dala would create a big fear campaign around Luke Skywalker and charged Luke with the crimes committed by Kaitis. Her angle was to pin the blame on Luke since Jacen was his student. Therefore, Luke should have seen and prevented his turn. Along with this charge though, Dala wanted more government accountability for the Jedi as a whole, and after a summit where Dala and Luke discussed the matter at hand, Luke agreed to be exiled as punishment. However, the stipulation was that he could acquit himself of the charge should he bring sufficient evidence that Kaitis' fall to the dark side was not his fault. This would cause Luke and his son Ben to travel around the galaxy, following in Jacen's footsteps to figure out everything he learned from the different Force factions around the galaxy, in an effort to clear the name of the Jedi. The Jedi's first stop was the world of Doran. The Kel Dor mystics of the planet were almost as old as the Jedi Order itself, and they had access to many esoteric force powers not known to the Jedi. In his journeys, Jacen had learned the strange ability from them that Luke was keen on learning himself. When Luke and Ben touched down on the planet, Luke immediately began to act a little strange. He looked very amused when Ben asked him what was so funny, and Luke simply responded with tradition. After that, the novel reads that he put on his most serene-looking Grandmaster expression before entering. Once they went into the large temple of the Barandu sages, they were greeted by a Kel Dor woman named Tistura Pan, a woman who was serving as the front entrance guardian. Luke introduces himself and his son to Pan, before stating that they're there to see her master. Pan says though that she recognizes the names of Luke and Ben, and they had become famous for their many wars that they had fought throughout the stars. However, the Kel Dor refused to let the Jedi enter, stating that she had no way to confirm that the two of them were who they really claimed to be, saying they could simply be imposters in disguise. After a small argument, the Kel Dor states that the only way she can be sure that Luke is the real Grandmaster is to fight him. Her reasoning behind this is that she knows she could never stand a chance against the real Grandmaster Luke. But now we're going to read what happens next in the novel directly. Luke nodded. A useful solution, but impractical. Because you are not worthy to face me, Luke said. Ben felt his eyes widen, and the young Jedi forced himself to resume an impassive, sabacc-playing expression. His father's words baffled him. They sounded so agreeable in tone, yet were more arrogant than anything he had ever heard his father ever say. This is the first and only time that Luke has ever put himself above another or has refused to fight. Many times in the Legends novels, Luke has no qualms with facing a lesser opponent, especially if he believes that whoever is challenging him truly has no chance. Luke will usually find a diplomatic solution or put the enemy down quickly, but never before has he gloated or lorded his power over someone in such a manner. This was so unexpected that Ben himself was at a loss for words. But the strangeness would not end there. The novel then says this. Luke continued, "Still, if a former apprentice of mine can best you, then the same conditions apply." He turned to Ben. "Son, go. Beat her up." End quote. Baffled by this command, Ben only questioned once, to which Luke spoke again and told him to knock her down a few pegs. After this, Luke would turn his back to them, not even willing to watch it himself, telling Ben to get him when it was over. Ben would agree, entering a brief skirmish with the Mystic. All the while, Luke wasn't even paying attention. The whole time he had his back to them and seemed to be casually inspecting his hands. Ben managed to easily best Pan, and she acknowledged their legitimacy before allowing them entry. After this whole entire strange event, Ben made sure they were alone before asking his father what all of that had been about, and Luke smiled softly, saying, "Rival school traditions." This still, though, doesn't make complete sense to Ben, and Luke finally explains his odd behavior. In many martial schools, such as rival lightsaber training academies in ancient eras, someone visiting a rival school would generally be denied any access or information until they proved his worth, which meant proving it to a master of the school in one-on-one combat. Before we arrived, I could sense Testura Pan's presence within the Force, and what her role here was, and that she knew that we were coming. If I had agreed to fight her, someone beneath my own rank, I would be acknowledging that I was not the equal of her master, and we would never find the leader of the Baron Du Sages. In this stroke of tradition and genius, Luke exercised the proper traditional protocol when visiting another rival temple. Luke knew the only way to get past the guard was to abide by these rules. The Grandmaster's explanation of how ancient lightsaber academies functioned was an excellent indicator of how Kel Dor society actually worked as well. Despite all of this happening 40 years after the Battle of Yavin, the Baron Du Sages still adhere to the ancient ways of how martial arts schools carried themselves. Kel Dor people are very traditional people, and among their many strict traditions is how they conduct their rank and status as wielders of the Force. This echoes a mystic time in the ancient days of the galaxy when Force users carried their reputation, and their reputations of others, with great reverence. While this may seem arrogant and disrespectful at first, these rules were established to actually emphasize respect, making a distinction of Force wielders of notable power and rank. It's the kind of society that was like merging between the cultures of the Jedi and the Sith. It has the friendly serenity of the Jedi, but with the competition and classist ways of the Sith Empire, before creating a system where strength in the Force and knowledge of combat was praised and appreciated, without there being absolute chaos and infighting. I love to think that Luke acknowledged these rules and is willing to bring back these traditions even if he doesn't necessarily agree with them. It's obvious to point out that Luke didn't actually think of himself as better than anyone else, but he was simply playing along in order to get the meeting that he desired. If anything, his willingness to abide by the traditions of the sages shows his humility even more than if he had tried to break them down. So in a backwards way, the most arrogant thing Luke ever did was something born out of humility and tradition, leading into a competitive culture between Force organizations that ensure that all of them remain strong through time. But anyway, my friends, what do you think of this small short story? Do you enjoy when we highlight specific events of interest? Thank you guys so much for visiting the channel today. It means the absolute world, and may the Force be with you.